Welcome back to another week of Alchemy Online. This week we are going to be taking a look at my old skateboard and sharing with you guys some things you can do to maintain and improve those decks if you don't have the money for a new one. So sit right back, take some notes if you like, and we are going to show you guys some tips on refurbishing our skateboards. First thing we're going to look at today as we do a little bit of TLC on our board is a really common problem is the squeaky bushings. Some people like a little squeak in their bushing, but most of us prefer it to be quiet. So one of the simplest and easiest things you can do if you have loud bushings and you want to quiet them down is we actually use just a little bit of skate wax, and we're going to rub that into the bushing seat of our hanger. Essentially, a squishy bushing is just buildup from friction from where the urethane of our bushing is rubbing against the metal of our hanger. And again, to remedy this, we're gonna use just a little bit of skate wax, and we're gonna just shave off a bit of it and actually just apply it inside the lip here of our hanger. So you can definitely take your brick of skate wax if you want and rub it into the bushing seat of your hanger, but I find it's a little easier to actually shave a little bit off, almost into sort of these little bits, and just kind of work them around the inside of that bushing seat. We don't want so much that it's built up and our bushing no longer sits flat in there. We just want a little bit of that in there, and it's gonna help eliminate that squeak for us. If you've gone ahead and applied the wax to your bushing seat, but you find your trucks are still a little bit squeaky, there's one other section of the truck that can suffer from a similar experience, and that is the pivot cup down in our base plate. So if you get your bushings waxed up and it's still a little bit squeaky, we can put a little bit of wax right inside that pivot cup. Again, don't fill it up. There's got to be room for your truck to fit back in there. And then we simply put the trucks back together, and we should have no squeak at all. If you've done a good job, we'll notice the difference pretty much immediately from squeakers to sneakers. Another common part of our skateboard that often needs a little bit of maintenance is our bearings. If you find your bearings are starting to get really loud, really noisy, you'll probably also notice that they're slowing down a little bit. The noise in our bearing comes from little particles of dirt, dust, debris, whatnot, working their way in around the shield. And that noise is actually, as they're getting rattled around that bearing, it's creating friction and slowing you down. So from time to time, it's nice to pop all your bearings out, and we can actually give them a tune-up to get them rolling basically brand new again. So step one, obviously, you're gonna have to take your wheels off and pull the bearings out. If you've never done it before, it's relatively simple. You just wanna make sure as you're doing it, you keep track of all your pieces, including the washer speed rings that go on either side of our bearing. You don't want to lose those. And to get our bearings out, simply insert the wheel halfway onto your truck, give it a little pull, and you'll be able to pop your bearings right out of the wheel. So once you've got your bearings out, depending on how destroyed they are, you might want to go ahead and soak them in some acetone or an isopropyl alcohol. It's going to help get all of the dirt, grime, and debris out of there. My bearings aren't totally toast, so we're gonna skip that step for now. And I'll also point out that I am riding Bones Reds, which are shielded on one side, so the side of the bearing that faces out to prevent dirt and debris, but the other side is exposed. So if we wanted to, we could add lubricant right into the backside here, but we're gonna pop those shields off so you can see in case you've got a double shielded bearing. It's relatively simple. You'll need a razor blade or something small and pokey, and essentially we're gonna just put that in the corner of the shield and pop that shield right out. Once you've got the shield off your bearing, you are good to apply your lubricant. We here at the shop love using the Bone Speed Cream. A lot of lubricants out there work, but stay away from WD-40. That's gonna dry out your bearings, and after about 40 seconds of fun, you're gonna have dusty, dry, upset bearings. So make sure you're using a lubricant that can handle high heat and high friction, but not be too oily. If you have a real grease-packed bearing, it's gonna actually attract dirt and slow itself down. The other tip I recommend when applying lubricant to your bearings is I like to do it on the axle of my truck, because as I'm dropping just a little bit of this lubricant, I like to spin the bearing to make sure that lubricant circulates all the way around the bearing. And make sure that you don't overdo it. It should not take more than 2-3 drops max. And spinning the bearing on the axle again helps circulate that lubricant. Once you feel like that lubricant has successfully made its way all the way around the bearing, I like to pop it off and just blot it out, making sure there's no excess. Again, if you've got too much liquid in your bearing, it's actually going to work against you and attract dirt and debris. So we want enough inside there in the ball cage around all of the steel balls, but not so much that it's dripping out. Once you've gone ahead and got it ready, go ahead and reapply your shield by simply pushing that piece right down into the bearing. If you've never put bearings in your wheels before, it's relatively simple and you can do so using your truck and no existing pieces. Simply take your first bearing, shield side facing in, because we want that side of the bearing to be protected, and we're gonna take our wheel and simply push it onto the bearing. When you're putting your bearings back in, you want to make sure that it's seated properly in the core, which you can do by visually inspecting it and making sure it's sitting flat. Another easy way to figure out if your bearing is in is to give your wheel a little spin. If it looks like this, your bearing is not seated properly. If you find you're having trouble getting that bearing in, just make sure you're giving a lot of pressure, and once it's seated in there, your wheel's going to spin nice and flat. Once you've got one in, you're going to do the same exact thing on the other side. Once you got both of your bearings in, it's time to put the wheel back on, and again, make sure you've got your speed rings. These little washers allow you to tighten your axle nut all the way without impeding the spin of your bearing. So one washer on the inside, then wheel, one washer on the outside, and then we're gonna finish it with the axle nut, which you wanna make sure all of the hardware on your board has a nylon ring in there. These are nylon lock nuts, and basically that little rubber ring inside there prevents your hardware from loosening as your board rattles down the road.